Here are the top stories for today, December 1, 2020. Davao del Norte joins Metro Manila and 6 more areas under general community quarantine until the end of the year. President Duterte sides with the military in insisting it is identifying and not red tagging legal CPP, NPA, and DF fronts. Drug firm Astrazeneca plans to conduct a Phase 3 clinical trial for a COVID-19 vaccine in the Philippines. And acclaimed writer Lualhati Bautista publishes her first poetry book. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Metro Manila, 3 provinces and 2 cities are under a general community quarantine or GCQ for the whole month of December. This was announced by President Duterte in a televised address to the people. The retention of the GCQ status was recommended by the Metro Manila mayors. The provinces of Batangas and Lanao del Sur are under GCQ until December 31st. Meanwhile, the cities under GCQ are Iloilo, Tacloban, Iligan, and Davao. Davao City reverted to GCQ following a rise in COVID-19 cases. The rest of the country will be under modified general community quarantine. Duterte renewed his call to the public to observe quarantine protocols such as frequent hand washing, physical distancing, and the wearing of face masks and face shields. He also hit critics for questioning the government's COVID-19 response, insisting that a vaccine is the only way to eliminate the virus.
Ang panlaban lang ng COVID is wash your hand, tapos wear a mask, and stay home. Yan lang ang medisina dyan. Hindi mo mabili sa butika yan.
President Duterte said that the military does not engage in red tagging, but is actually identifying leftist groups as legal fronts of the CPP-NPA. The president also said that some lawmakers are actually members of the communist movement.
Itong mga legal fronts ng komunista, lahat yan, Makabayan, Bayan, they are all legal fronts. Gabriela, hindi yan sila, we are not red tagging you. We are identifying you as members in a grand conspiracy comprising all the legal fronts that they have organized, headed by NDF. Gusto lang nila umagaw ng gobyerno.
He also said that several former CPP-NPA members have openly attacked and criticized communists for their brutality in this communal war, and that the indigenous communities were the most affected by atrocities committed by the CPP-NPA members.
Ang makaawa nito itong mga pobre na taga-bukid na madadala ninyo. And I think 75%, at least in Mindanao, mga lumad. Kayong mga lumad, umuwi kayo, sabihin ninyo sa mga tao ninyo na niluloko lang sila ng NPA talaga. Totoo yan. Ang maraming namatay ang lumad. So, if this thing goes on, the lumads, yung native na Filipino talaga, will become an extinct tribe.
The League of Parents of the Philippines, or LPP, railed against the claims of the MAKABAYAN bloc that they were just red-tagged. The anti-communist group cited tons of evidence pointing out the alleged involvement of the MAKABAYAN bloc in the disappearances of students who were reportedly recruited by its member organizations. In a recent Senate hearing on red tagging, former cadres and members of the CPP-NPA have exposed the recruitment process of the rebel group using its legal front organization. The former NPA members have also confirmed the ties between the CPP-NPA and the organizations allied with the MAKABAYAN bloc. According to the former NPA members, 90% of communist cadres were recruited from schools and universities through the legal front organizations of the CPP, NPA, NDF. LPP Chair Remy Rosadio slammed Makabayan for repeatedly denying that it does not have links with the CPP, NPA, NDF, and reiterated calls of parents to end the recruitment of the youth to become members of the NPA. Meanwhile, LPP spokesperson Arlene Escalante said members of the MAKABAYAN bloc were just orchestrating scenes to get more sympathy from the public, which she said is obviously underrated. During the Senate hearing, Escalante said they noticed that the statements of members of the MAKABAYAN bloc were contradicting each other, as one said they are not recruiting students into the armed struggle, but the other one was saying student militants are first targets for NPA recruitment. The group said the Senate probe on red tagging will serve as an eye-opener for the public about the recruitment schemes conducted by the groups. The MAKABAYAN bloc has continued to deny its ties with the CPP, NPA, NDF. The indigenous peoples group, as well as the military and government officials, reacted to the death of Jevelyn Culyamat, daughter of Bayan Muna Party List Representative Euphemia Culyamat. The younger Culyamat died when the troops engaged the rebels in a 45-minute firefight in Barangay San Isidro, Marihatag in Surigao del Sur. The details from Benj Bondo.
For the indigenous peoples leaders in Mindanao, the Communist Party of the Philippines and the Makabayan bloc should be held responsible for the death of Jevelyn Culyamat, daughter of Bayan Muna Party List Representative Euphemia Culyamat. In a joint statement, the Mindanao Indigenous Peoples Youth Organization or MIPYO and Mindanao Indigenous Council of Elders and Leaders or MIPSEL accused the CPP and Makabayan bloc of killing them and corrupting their culture. They said the groups are cursing their lands and pitting them with their own brothers and sisters. MIPYO Chair Lipatuan Joel Unad and MIPSEL head Albin James Binayao lamented that the mother of slain NPA member Bayan Muna Representative Euphemia Culyamat even said it is her daughter's decision to join the armed struggle was justified. The IP leaders said the Makabayan bloc, which earlier denied its links to the CPP, NPA, NDF, is deaf and blind to the recruitment of the IP youth into the NPA, where they become child warriors in the process. They also pointed out that the groups Mapasu, Alcadev, and Tribal Filipino Program of Surigao del Sur were all created by the CPP-NPA to be their legal fronts to exploit the IPs. The leaders called on their brothers and sisters to take the responsibility of ending the communist insurgency in their respective areas. Meanwhile, Southern Luzon Command or SOLCOM Chief Lieutenant General Antonio Patlade Jr. said the death of Jevelyn Culyamat is yet another proof of Bayan Muna's recruitment of youth into the NPA. He said the daughter of Bayan Muna representative herself made a sacrifice for a useless cause, serving as an armed medic in the guerrilla movement. Parlade dismissed the claims of Representative Culyamat that medics are protected by international convention during conflicts, as Jevelyn was clearly armed with an M653. The same convention states that medics should not be combatants. The Army also recovered 3 AK-47 rifles, 1 M14 rifle, 1 M653 5.56 caliber rifle, 5 backpacks that contain war material, and subversive documents at the encounter site. For Presidential Communications Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy, Bayan Muna Party List Representative Euphemia Culyamat now knows the pain and the kind of loss and grief experienced by all those parents whose activist children were killed in violent pursuit of a misguided cause. Badoy, who is the spokesperson of the National Task Force on Ending Local Communist Armed Conflict, calls on the leaders of the CPP, NPA, NDF to lay down their arms and move away from extremism. Meanwhile, AFP spokesperson Marine Major General Edgar Arevalo said the military condoles with the Culyamat family following the death of Jevelyn. Arevalo said this senseless killing of and by fellow Filipinos, espoused and propagated by CPP leaders like Jose Maria Jo Masison, living luxuriously in some foreign land, should come to an end. The AFP also denied allegations that the remains of the NPA combatant was used as a trophy. For his part, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said members of the Philippine Army's 3rd Special Forces Battalion immediately evacuated the younger Kulyamat's cadaver from the encounter site. He said the military has also readily coordinated and provided transportation as well as security assistance to the Kulyamat family. Lorenzana also instructed the responding units of the AFP to ensure that the NPA casualty is treated with dignity. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Ben Shbondo.
Contrary to the belief of Bayan Muna Party List Representative Euphemia Kulyamat, his son Jixon Kulyamat has cited the various community programs of the government for indigenous peoples' communities. Jixon said the relationship between the IP communities and the soldiers so far seems to be okay. In a video statement on Facebook, Jixon said soldiers have not committed any violation since they arrived in Sitio Ayan in Barangay Diatogon, Lianga, Surigao del Sur. Speaking in the local language, Jixon expressed his appreciation to the military for help in building a dam in their area. He adds that the presence of military personnel in their community has brought peace to the IP communities. An abused female NPA member and 7 others surrendered, while more CPP NPA supporters in Aurora Province also pledged loyalty to the government. The details from Janice Cabe.
An 18-year-old member of the Communist New People's Army who served as a medic of its guerrilla front has recently surrendered to the Army's 26th Infantry Battalion in Agusan del Sur. According to 2nd Lieutenant Cecil Tapa of the 26th Infantry Battalion, alias Banji was impregnated by her colleague inside the movement. Another female NPA member, alias Denden, also voluntarily surrendered after serving the rebel group for 7 years. She said the hardships she experienced inside the NPA pushed her to surrender. Alias Denden, who is now a mother to her 8 children, handed over a .45 caliber pistol with a magazine and ammunition. Meanwhile, 7 combatants of the Communist New People's Army have surrendered to the Army's 6th Infantry Division in Maguindanao. The guerrillas said they decided to surrender after experiencing hardships in the mountains due to persistent military pursuit operations. The former rebels handed over 1 M14 rifle, Garand rifle, M1 carbine rifle, 2 M1 carbine sniper rifles, Garand rifle, a .45 caliber pistol, and 357 Magnum revolver. The surrenderers would all be enrolled under the Enhanced Comprehensive Local Integration or ECLIP program of the government. In Aurora, 6 residents of San Luis who were deceived to support the CPP-NPA-NDF vowed loyalty to the government in Barangay Ditumambo. The former rebel supporters who withdrew their membership from the Sectoral Front Organization will avail of benefits under the government's Community Support Program. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cabe.
Bayan Muna Party List Representative Euphemia Kulyamat says her daughter's joining in the armed movement is considered as an act of heroism. She said her 22-year-old daughter joined the NPA to fight the injustices committed against the indigenous peoples. She said she is proud of her daughter and she is a hero among the IPs as well as in the country. Can we consider joining the NPA as a noble and heroic deed? Let us find out what the public is saying in our Boses ng Masa.
Kasi po, meron tayong yung tinatawag na government. Kaya dapat, hindi tayo sumasangay sa mga ganyang kasi nandito tayo sa Pilipinas, although may freedom tayo, pero dapat sa government tayo makinig.
Kasi masama po yan kalaban ng gobyerno, mga polis, ganun. Pati sundalo. Kalaban din kasi ng gobyerno yun. Kaya baka magkagulo ba? Yun lang. Tsaka baka mapadami yung kalaban nila. Kaya huwag ka na sumali kasi nakakasama sa mga kabataan.
Depende kung ano po yung sa pinaglalaban nila. Ang makakabuti sa karamihan or yung iba kasi dinarban lang. Daban lang din na parang pang sarili lang din.
Ay, hindi po. Bakit po? Kasi rebelde yun eh, baga sa kawayan ng gobyerno.
Pwede, kung ano yung pinaglalaban nila, depende sa pinaglalaban nila. Kung tama ba yung mga gusto nila.
Still to come, drug firm Astrazeneca plans to conduct a Phase 3 clinical trial for a COVID-19 vaccine in the Philippines. Magat Dam continues its spilling operations amid monsoon rains. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Sa matinding laban natin sa Coronavirus Disease 2019, sugpuin din natin ang pagkalat ng fake news. Huwag magbahagi ng impormasyon na hindi tiyak ang pinagmulan. I-check mabuti ang source ng balita. Kumuha lamang ng impormasyon mula sa mga official channel ng Department of Health. Huwag magpadala sa maling balita, basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Pharmaceutical firm Astrazeneca expressed its intent to conduct a Phase 3 clinical trial in the Philippines. According to the Department of Science and Technology, Astrazeneca already signed a confidentiality disclosure agreement that would allow the Philippines Vaccine Expert Panel to check the data on the firm's Phase 1 and 2 clinical trial for its COVID-19 vaccine. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical firm Pfizer will not conduct a clinical trial in the Philippines for its COVID-19 vaccine.
AstraZeneca po nagsubmit ang kanilang application for the conduct of a clinical trial phase 3 as of last November 20. At ang VEP po, ang Vaccine Expert Panel, ay nakumpleto na po ang kanilang initial na evaluation tungkol po sa trial na ito. Tama po kayo, Secretary, kailangan pa rin po na maaprubahan ng ating Food and Drug Administration kahit na po sila mabigyan ng emergency use authorization ng ibang bansa katulad ng Amerika. Pfizer po ay hindi magsasagawa ng clinical trial sa ating bansa, pero patuloy po ang ating negosasyon sa Pfizer.
The Mindanao Media Hub, or MMH, in Davao City will air its first TV broadcast on Saturday, December 5. The Presidential Communications Operations Office said the MMH, which is the first PCOO media hub outside Metro Manila, will broadcast an episode of the regular 11 a.m. Laging Handa public briefing. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar will host from Davao City, while PCOO Undersecretary Rocky Ignacio will co-host from the PTV headquarters in Quezon City. Senator Bongo will lead the ribbon cutting of the PTV MMH studio and will also be among the guests during the public briefing. The MMH will serve as the government's main broadcast hub in regions 10 to 13 and the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Meanwhile, the start of the construction of the Visayas Media Hub will likely take place in 2021. As Lawag City goes on modified ECQ, tricycles are placed under a number coding scheme to maintain the flow of public transportation. More on this and other news from the provinces from Marita Mawai.
The city government of Lawag has implemented a number coding for tricycles under the localized modified enhanced community quarantine. Under the EO, tricycle franchise numbers ending in 1 and 2 are not allowed to operate on Monday, 3 and 4 on Tuesday, 5 and 6 on Wednesday, 7 and 8 on Thursday, and 9 and 0 on Friday. For the whole duration of the MECQ, depending on the COVID-19 situation, public transportation shall only be allowed within the city, subject to the following conditions. Passengers of a public utility jeepney shall be limited to 50% capacity only, 2 passengers for taxis, and 1 passenger for tricycle only. In Leyte, Sangi Minterio in Hipugsno Village, Baybay City will remain under lockdown after several secondary contacts of confirmed patients have tested positive in the random rapid antigen testing for COVID-19. Mayor Jose Carlos Cari extending the lockdown on Sangi Minterio starting 10 a.m. on Monday until December 15 to facilitate the disease surveillance, contact tracing, and testing to contain the spread of the virus. The community was placed under strict movement restrictions on November 18, having the city's most active coronavirus cases. As of Sunday, the city has 59 active cases, 39 of whom are from Hipugsno village, based on the monitoring of its health office. Meanwhile, police and military authorities in Soxargen and Maguindanao are closely watching Daula Islamia extremists involved in the Marawi siege and Holo Cathedral bombing for possible retaliatory attacks in the region. This came after state forces killed Abdul Rashid Lamalan, allegedly a bomb expert of the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, in a running gun battle along the Isulan-Takurong City Highway in Sultan Kudarat last week, November 26. All army units in the region are on high alert status following the death of Lamalan, who was linked to the 2019 Holo Cathedral bombing. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
The Magat Dam in northern Luzon is likely to continue spilling operations this week, which may cause flooding in its downstream communities. Pag-asa said rains from the surging northeast monsoon or amihan can increase inflow or flow of water into the dam, prompting it to spill excess water to prevent structural damage. The release of water from Magat Dam contributed to flooding that affected areas in the Cagayan Valley region earlier this month. The Weather Bureau said the northeast monsoon would prevail over northern Luzon in the next 4 days, bringing light to moderate rains. 2 gates were opened at 6 a.m. Sunday to release more excess water, while 1 gate was open on Monday morning. The rules on the implementation of the Visa Upon Arrival or VUA scheme has already been tightened early this year. This came after Senator Risa Ontiveros urged the Bureau to terminate the VUA scheme for Chinese nationals to stop the crimes involving workers of Philippine offshore gaming operators or POGOs. Immigration Commissioner Jaime Morente said admission is already itinerary-based with a maximum stay of 30 days and may no longer need to be extended or converted to any type of visa. Morente said before the pandemic, the VUA scheme accounted for only about 5% of the total arrivals of Chinese nationals in the country. Morente added that kidnapping cases involving foreign nationals cannot be directly attributed to the VUA scheme. He, however, said they respect the lawmakers' call for reforms to further improve the agency's services. Up next, President Duterte issues a warning against entities planning to revive the Corazon Baleleng syndicate. And acclaimed writer Lualhati Bautista publishes her first poetry book. More on this when the PNA Newsroom returns.
Tandaan ang tamang paraan ng paghuhugas at paglilinis ng kamay upang makaiwas sa iba't ibang karamdaman. Basain ng tubig ang mga kamay at sabunin. Unang sabunin ang mga palad at ang likod ng mga kamay. Kuskusin na maigi ang pagitan ng mga daliri at maging ang mga kuko. Isunod ang pagitan ng mga hinlalaki at kuskusin ng paikot ang mga dulo ng mga daliri sa magkabilang palad. Banlawang mabuti ang mga kamay sa malinis na tubig at patuyuin ang mga kamay gamit ang single-use towel o air dryer. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
President Rodrigo Duterte warned those who are allegedly trying to revive the Corazon Baleleng gang to shape up, saying they do not stand a chance against the government. Duterte said even if they tried to get rid of government forces, their efforts would go to waste. Based in Osamis, the Corazon Baleleng is an organized crime syndicate involved in activities such as kidnapping, robberies, drug trafficking, and other crimes. In 1988, the military disbanded Curatong Baleleng, but its remnants continued with their lawless pursuits in Osamis. In the same speech, Duterte also named government officials dismissed for corruption, including members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and Philippine National Police and local officials. He said he means to honor his commitment to the people to report the progress of the government's campaign against graft and corruption. The Armed Forces of the Philippines welcomed a recommendation to dismiss the police officers involved in the June 29 shooting of 4 military intelligence operatives in Jolo, Sulu. The recommendation is based on the findings of the PNP Internal Affairs Service. AFP spokesperson Marine Major General Edgar Arevalo said the military is still waiting for the criminal case against the suspects to start rolling. He added that the AFP is still looking forward to the twofold criminal and civil liabilities of those involved in the murder of their intelligence operatives. Arevalo added the AFP will not renege on its commitment to the victims and their loved ones to pursue justice for them until it is served judiciously and with due haste. PNP Chief General De Bolsinas meanwhile clarified that the report has yet to reach his office. In sports, Danny Kingad's scheduled bout at One Big Bang has been called off after one of his cornermen contracted COVID-19. Kingad's group had to be isolated and his bout against fellow flyweight contender Kairat Akhmetov, scheduled on Friday night at the Singapore Indoor Stadium, had to be postponed. However, one announced on Monday that Rene Catalan, another Filipino, will see action in the card. The former one strawweight title challenger will take on Bokang Matsunyane, an unbeaten South African fighter. Matsunyane returns after nearly a year or after he scored a unanimous win against Ryuto Sawada at One Mark of Greatness in Kuala Lumpur on December 6, 2019. Acclaimed author and screenwriter Lualhati Bautista has self-published her first poetry book titled Alitaptap sa Gabing Madilim. The Alitaptap sa Gabing Madilim contains around 200 poems she wrote since the early 70s. As early as June, she has been thinking about self-publishing a poetry collection after digging through old poems she wrote but never released to the public. She said knowing that her works continue to inspire young readers has helped lift up her spirits. She once acknowledged that the younger generation has developed a strong desire to read books. She expressed hope that they would read more works by Filipino authors. Bautista is hopeful that young writers should write about social issues such as changing the social narrative on entrenched gender roles. Signed copies of Bautista's poetry collection are available from Bukay Ukay, Bookfellas, Pandayan Bookshop, Solidaridad Bookshop, and her personal Facebook page. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. Davao del Norte joins Metro Manila and 6 more areas under general community quarantine until the end of the year. President Duterte sides with the military in insisting it is identifying and not red tagging legal CPP, NPA, and DF fronts. Drug firm Astrazeneca plans to conduct a Phase 3 clinical trial for a COVID-19 vaccine in the Philippines. And acclaimed writer Lualhati Bautista publishes her first poetry book. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, check our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. It is 24 days to go before Christmas. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day to all.